welcome back to the Literary Critics Show. I am your host, John Brumsfeld, and today we have the privilege to hear from another short story author who has done intensive study on a literary contemporary short story author himself. And today's short story person is John Steinbeck. So, joining me today on our show is the author himself who has done intensive research on John Steinbeck, Vlad Kovrnishki from Western Uruguay. And Vlad, would you care to illuminate our author some?
Yes, thank you for having me on your show. While many people have heard the name John Steinbeck, few people really know much about him. Through his writings, he has achieved great fame, but he has also caused great controversy. His writing on social justice and the American dream have given many Americans hope. In this broadcast, I will discuss his life, his works, and how he drew inspiration from his life. John Steinbeck was born in 1902 in Salinas, California. He had a great love for his homeland, and the inspiration it had on his life was seen through many of his later works. Steinbeck was born into a financially secure home. However, he was not a pampered boy. John attended Salinas High School and later spent 7 years at Stanford University. Although he never graduated, the biology and literary classes he took there had a significant impact on his writings. Throughout Steinbeck's younger years, he had a great love for the outdoors and manual labor. He spent many summers as a young boy helping on a cattle ranch that his uncle owned. This love of manual labor gave Steinbeck a great respect for the lower and middle working classes. Recently, I read a short story series that Steinbeck titled The Red Pony. In this series, Steinbeck's love of the simple way of life is very evident. Also evident in the story was Steinbeck's personal love of adventure and the American dream. One recurring theme in The Red Pony was the loss of innocence associated with the death of a loved one. I thought it was interesting that during Steinbeck's writing of this story, he too was having to face the harshness of death. His work on this story was completed while caring for his beloved mother, who was slowly dying. Near the beginning of the short story, Jody, a young boy of 10, is given a colt to raise. Throughout the next weeks of raising the colt, Joey forms a tight bond with it. When the colt tragically becomes sick and goes through weeks of anguish before finally passing away, Jody is devastated. The relation to Steinbeck's life is not hard to see. In The Red Pony, Steinbeck portrays his feelings of trying to cope with the anguish of slowly losing a loved one. But now it is time for a short break. I hope you enjoy this slideshow of pictures and return for the second way that The Red Pony related to Steinbeck's life. Hello, and welcome back to the Literary Critics Club. We will now continue with The Red Pony and the second way that it relates to John Steinbeck's life. A recurring theme in The Red Pony was one of disappointment due to the loss of hope. Steinbeck, at the beginning of his mother's struggle with health, was sure she would recover. He cared after her with a fierce determination to help her regain her health. But as the days of caring for her turned to months, and the months to years, Steinbeck's determination transformed to disappointment and despair. Steinbeck not only was facing the slow death of his mother, his father was also breaking under the strain of his mother's sickness. Steinbeck is quoted in referring to this as saying, "Death I can stand, but not this slow torture wherein a good and strong man tears off little shreds of himself and throws them away." This sad theme of despair and disappointment is seen throughout the Red Pony in a number of ways. First, at the beginning of Jody's colt's sickness, the farmhand Billy Buck assures Jody that it will recover. After months of no improvement and increasingly risky and brutal tactics, the despair in Jody's life is easy to see. He is a shell of his former joyful self, and spends most of his days moping around the house. Although these rough times in Steinbeck's life, he seems to focus on the negatives, this was not always the case in his works. In many of his later novels, a recurring theme is the social injustice done to the impoverished migrants from the Kentucky's Dust Bowl. His most acclaimed book, The Grapes of Wrath, was written from Steinbeck's first-hand experience of migrating with a family from Kentucky and their struggle to survive. Through this novel, like many of his others, Steinbeck's greatest aim as a writer is seen. This aim was to expose the many grievous faults and failures of a society for the purpose of improvement. Okay. Through his life, John Steinbeck faced many hard times. His writing seemed to be almost an escape from his tumultuous life, and a way for him to express his underlying feelings. The way Steinbeck elevates himself over other writers, however, is his ability to rise above his own problems and to make an attempt to better the world. I hope that you were as encouraged by John Steinbeck's life story as I was. Well, that is all the time we have today for today's show. I hope you have gained some valuable insight into the life of one of America's best-known authors. Until next week, all of us at the Literary Critics Club bid you a warm farewell.
In light of the sun.